Give me 1 second, I'll just accept that recording. So yeah, Sajjad Mir, my role is within neighbourhood services within Rochdale Council. I am sat within the community safety team, and my job title is community cohesion, resilience and integration. So I do a lot of work. You may not see me, you may not recognize me, but my team does a lot of work with the communities in various different forms. It works across the partnerships, and it will work with voluntary sector as well. So very much kind of engage with the community in some shape or form through either directly myself or with the team that I work with and other services within the council. And what I wanted to do today is just talk you through the grant scheme which has launched, and if you've had a chance to look at it, that's brilliant, because you might already have an idea about what questions you might want to ask, but just to be able to give you a summary overview of what we are doing this year, and it's a slight difference from previous years, so I wanted to try and emphasize some of those points, and just to try and illustrate a little bit better, because some of the feedback that we've had from previous years is one of confusion amongst some of the applicants, where they couldn't understand fully what the eligibility criteria was about, and as a result their applications were possibly not as strong as it could have been and were therefore unsuccessful. One thing I will say before I start on the presentation is a couple of, probably try and break it down into 3 areas, but one of the areas is around the need for you to ask for feedback, whether you are successful or not. Always ask for feedback, because that learning opportunity there is important, and you can always obviously then go to action together, and people like Liz to be able to then understand what does that feedback mean and how can I improve on future applications. So yeah, can we bring on the presentation, please, Emma? Sorry, we'll just start going through that first of all, and let you introduce yourself, Emma. Brilliant. Yes, we can see that. Thank you. Do you want to just say hello, Emma, for the purpose of the group?
Hi, my name's Emma Holloway. I'm the Cohesion Officer for Rochdale Council. So I kind of just help out with the admin work on the grant. So that's me, really. I am having a few issues with the sheet screen sharing, so let me know if that goes off. Do you want me to start the presentation?
Yes, please. Thank you. Okay. Yes, yes, we can. So basically, just to give a bit of background context, the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, overseen by Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, and Baroness Beverly Hughes, the Police and Crime Commissioner, for the last 4 years have devolved a grant allocation to every local authority in Greater Manchester. And I stress that because it may be that you choose to apply it for a grant in another local authority area, not just Rochdale. So the opportunity is there to extend your reach beyond just the Rochdale borough. And the purpose of this grant, and it's in the sum of £100,000, is to deliver against priorities which have changed recently. And that was one of the reasons why I was keen to try and get into this session today. It has changed recently, and these things do change every 2 to 3 years, depending on the priorities set by Baroness Hughes. And that devolved grant is designed to go to grassroots communities or people who work with grassroots communities in the community and deliver projects against those 3 priorities. So that's a little bit of a background. We have had this scheme running for 4 years, and it's been quite a successful scheme so far. Next slide, please, Emma. So as you know, the application is live. Applications are accepted by voluntary sector organisations, whether you are a registered charity, a community interest company, a not-for-profit organization, anyone that works within that kind of, I don't like using the term third sector because you're not the third sector. You are very much, in my mind, at the front of delivery in the community. So, you know, the community sector is a term that I kind of tend to use a lot more than the other term. You may be asked if your application does pass the paper sift to come and deliver a short presentation. And just to give you a little bit of further understanding around that one is we do get a lot of applicants. I think over the last couple of years, based on the £100,000 allocation, we have been oversubscribed by £250,000. So difficult decisions need to be made against applications. Not everyone will be successful. And for those who are, if they are applying for a larger amount, that generally tends to be the informal rule. If you're applying for a large amount, we may ask you to come and deliver a short presentation. This is something new because the panel that makes a decision consists of members of the local authority, elected members, Greater Manchester Police, Action Together to represent the voluntary sector, and other individuals that has an interest in these three priorities set below. And the priorities that we've identified here are based on the Standing Together Greater Manchester Police and Crime Plan priorities set by Baroness Hughes and the Greater Manchester Local Authority. So they will be the same across Greater Manchester, is keeping people safe and supporting victims, reducing harm and offending, and strengthening communities in place. Now, to break that down a little bit more, what we have added on is just trying, and this is not an exhaustive list, so please don't take those narratives there as the only factors that we will consider within an application, but keeping people safe and supporting victims could look very different depending on which organization you represent. But we had tried to give an idea here about what we might be looking for within the panel. So protecting vulnerable people, how are you doing that? Improving victim services, how are you doing that? But how are you also linking in with mainstream services? And I'll expand a little bit more on the three as I've gone through. Reducing harm and offending, so that would be around the prevention world. How do you prevent people from committing an offence? How do you create diversionary activities, for example, in making sure that, say, young people are deterred from a life of crime and committing an offence? How do you work with services to rehabilitate people who are on the periphery or have committed an offence already? And drug and alcohol being one of the underlying factors which people have said in the consultation that set the police and crime plan have been one of the issues that people say are triggers towards committing crime and offending. Strengthening communities and places. This is more probably for the groups that do a lot of activities in the community to try and address cohesion issues, bringing people together. We have had some organizations in the past that have created safe places for people who have identified that they have potential victims of hate crime, for example, and tackling inequality. Inequality is in here, is in this year because of the post-COVID kind of issues that we've identified around inequalities in service delivery and possibly health inequalities as well. What I will say is, oh, sorry, could you just go back a second, please, Emma? What I will emphasize again is this is not an exhaustive list. When we look at applications in the panel, there are possibly three things that we look at. If you decide to choose a project based along one or more of these priorities, we want to see an evidence of need. Quite often, applications get rejected because they haven't got a strong basis to be able to then say we are capable of delivering X, Y, or Z, because this is a gap that we have identified. This is how we've identified it, and this is the evidence to justify the need for this particular project, whatever that project might be. Secondly, we look at the project delivery in itself. Is it proportionate to the amount requested? Is it looking at utilizing services locally? Is it considering working across a partnership role? So, you know, if you're, especially if you're asking for a larger grant, is it looking at linking in with mainstream services, and how? Because we have had some applications in the past where people have said, we're capable of delivering this, but yet we are not qualified to deliver it. So you can imagine the dilemma that the panel may have in trying to rationalize allocating a grant to people who may not be necessarily qualified to deliver a particular project, because we will carry out some due diligence. We will do some basic checks and balances just to make sure that an organization has passed a certain fit test. And it's an informal thing. It's not a deep dive into the organization. It's just a basic due diligence, and just so that we are satisfied that they are delivering that one. And then the third thing is, what are the outcomes? Many people deliver projects, but they can't measure the outcomes. They're unable to demonstrate what they have achieved. And it's not just about the quantitative element of the project, it could also be about the qualitative aspect of the project as well. I always encourage people to perhaps illustrate this through a couple of case studies, if they've or potential case studies or testimonials if in the application stage, of maybe projects that they have delivered similarly in the past, which is again contributing towards the first element of evidence of need. And then the case studies and the testimonials would hopefully strengthen an application to show that yes, there is a place for this in the borough of Rochdale, and the delivery will benefit the community as a whole. One thing I will quite bluntly say is we will not consider applications that are delivered outside of the borough. That's a very big no-no. We have had that in the past, people who are delivering activities in other parts of Greater Manchester, because that's not what this fund is for. We are here to deliver projects for the benefit of people of Rochdale Borough. And as unfair as that might seem to some people, other local authorities, as I've said, have received the same allocation and they're expecting to deliver projects in their area. So it would only be fair to suggest that the same happens in Rochdale Borough as well, where projects are delivered in the borough and not elsewhere in Greater Manchester. We will consider organisations that are not based in Rochdale Borough. So that's just to clarify that. Organisations that operate outside of the borough but wish to deliver a project in the borough will be considered. But again, it will be the panel decision as to whether they are satisfied that the project delivery is robust enough based against the amount requested. I hope that makes sense. Next slide, please, Emma. This is a reminder again, evidence of need, to show that there is a need or demand for your project. How have you captured that? If you've got testimonials, if you've got case studies, that would be brilliant. How will you measure the outcomes? One thing that hasn't been mentioned that is bullet pointed on number 3 there is sustainability. We accept that not every project will have a legacy, but some of the projects that do carry legacies beyond the delivery itself are quite often looked upon more favorably than projects which suddenly come to an end. And there is a recognition and acknowledgement that organizations, do rely on funding sometimes, and the delivery of this project is finite. But again, if there was a way of you taking it beyond the time that you say that you want to deliver this project by, then in whatever shape or form, you guys will know best, then please draw that out into the application as well. And we want a detailed breakdown of costs. We've already had some projects where people haven't really broken down the cost, or they've done a very superficial breakdown of costs. Again, if you are asking for an amount of money which is public money, then the minimum we would want is a detailed breakdown of costs. Next one, please, Emma. Thank you. A couple of recently successful applications, we just thought we'd bring them out here, is a project where it was a safe place project where people went because they felt they were potential targets of crime. They felt vulnerable for whatever reason. Maybe it was because of their identity, maybe it was because of their sexuality, maybe it was something else. And it was a collaboration effort with businesses, with organizations to create spaces where people felt safe when they are out and about, and they were branded as such so that people knew when they were walking out and about in the community that this is a safe place that I could go and ask for help should I need it. And the other one was a social enterprise which provided employment opportunities for young people, especially those who were ex-offenders. And that, again, that diversionary activity helped towards, based on the outcomes that they demonstrated within the project, helped towards reducing reoffending, whilst also increasing that engagement and that contribution and giving back to their local community. Some of these individuals went on to gain qualifications and better their chances at getting employment or training opportunities, and having a very valuable contribution to society. And it helped towards their probation and their license conditions as well. So that was another case study. Next one, please, Emma. Okay, so the closing day is midnight, Sunday, the 10th of July. We do every year get late applications. What I will say to that is, if there is a genuinely strong reason for an application going in late, please do email us, and it will be for the chair of the panel to make a decision as to whether they accept. You'd be surprised how many applications do come in late, but it is midnight, Sunday, the 10th of July, and I'll try and say 23:59 on the 10th of July. So we're not going into the 11th of July. And it's not Saturday, the 9th of July, heading into Sunday, if that makes sense. It is 23:59 on Sunday, the 10th of July. As I've mentioned before, some applications may be invited to present in front of the panel, and that just helps the panel decide on whether they understand the application itself. Sometimes applications don't illustrate themselves very well, so we might have a few questions. We might want to learn more, but we might see a merit in an application, but then feel that we could draw something else more about, from this project. Or we might have a suggestion to say, have you thought about working closely? We might have projects that are very similar and several of them, but we might say, have you thought about working together? And then if that is the case, then perhaps you can deliver the same thing which benefits the borough and the people, maybe join forces together. But there could be various different reasons, but quite often it'll be about just wanting to understand the project more. And if it is a larger application, as I've said several times already, then we may just want to scrutinize the application a little bit more. All applications will be notified whether they are or not successful. And as I've said before, we would want you to make sure that you ask for feedback, whatever the decision may be. The final bullet point, evaluation of the project, is definitely required. It will be a small print within the agreement between the local authority and yourself. We struggle every year to get feedback from people and evaluation from organizations. We do struggle and we have to keep chasing people. But if you've been given a grant, the least we would expect a person to do, or an organization to do, is complete the evaluation forms at the end of the project. We may ask for an interim evaluation, and the purpose of that is so that we can report back to the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, who want to know how we have spent our money, or their money, should I say. And failure to provide that may result in the applicant or the organization being prevented from applying next year if we are given the same allocation again. It is a struggle. It is one of the biggest bugbears that we have, is evaluations are not completed. One other thing that I will add onto this one is, quite often some applications some applicants ask that this project be allowed to continue beyond the financial year. That is a natural cut-off point where we expect applications to complete their delivery. If there is a case for that, please approach us. We will consider that and make a decision based on your request. We can't guarantee that we would want that project to be continuing beyond March, the end of March 2023, but approach us if you feel that you are unable to deliver a project beyond by that time. And obviously recently COVID was an issue where, especially where people were struggling to bring people together, but hopefully you are able to deliver by March. If there is an argument to be made beyond March, then please contact us. Next slide, please. Here's a link. You'll get, I think, will they get a copy of this PowerPoint, Liz?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to send that out later later this week.
Right, thanks. So this is a copy of the Safer Communities Plan for Rochdale, and it also has a link towards a Greater Manchester plan as well. So by all means, please have a read of that when you get a chance. So it will illustrate more from a Greater Manchester perspective and also from a local perspective around the three priorities that we have around keeping people safe and supporting victims, reducing harm and offending, and strengthening communities and place. Thank you very much. Happy to talk through in a bit more detail if anyone has any questions.
Brilliant. Thanks, Saj. Let me just find the record button and stop recording. Where was that gone? Oh, there, pause, stop recording. That's what matters. Oh no, that still looks like it's recording. There we go.